Hello everyone, this is Global Fashion Workshop. I remind you that we post new videos every day. I also want to remind you that some of our video courses are already available. Buy them if you haven't done it yet. We would really appreciate your support. Today we continue working with the coat with dolman sleeves and gussets. We're going to show you how to sew and edge gussets. We've already shown you how to make a coat with dolman sleeves. Have a close look at it once again. One of the gussets is already stitched. It was edged with the bias binding. Today we're going to show you how to do it in detail. We've made a mock-up of the front and the back. The mock-up is of an absolutely the same shape as the coat was. The cut is 7 centimeters long. We're also going to use a piece of the interfacing material and the bias binding. Be very attentive, please. First of all, we need to double the cut. Let's go to the sewing machine. Natalie is applying the interfacing material to the cut. It's very important to do it. It's necessary to prevent the fabric from damaging when we draw it apart. It's a must to do it. Natalie is stitching the underarm seam. The width of the seam is 1.2 centimeters. 1.5 centimeters would be too much. Stitch the seam up to the cut. Next, we need to stitch the side seam. Do not forget to make back stitches at the beginning and the end of the seams. The shoulder seams are not stitched, so we can easily spread the details. Due to this fact, it's very convenient to work with the details. We need to iron the stitch seams. They should be pressed open, both the underarm seam and the side seam. Next, we need to check if the gusset fits the opening. We need to make a cut in the detail which was doubled with the interfacing material. It's very important to check if the gusset fits the opening. Natalie applies the gusset, joins the matching points, and pins them. It's very important to do it accurately. The gussets allow you raising your arms easily. You can hardly raise your arms in a garment with such sleeves, and the gusset can help you. We show you some very useful techniques. You can tack the gussets first. Natalie is going to stitch it with a sewing machine without taking it. You can start stitching only when you are sure that the checkpoints match. Be very careful. Stitch from one checkpoint to the other. Make sure that the needle is inside of the detail and turn it. Have a close look here. Natalie has stitched the first side. From one checkpoint to the other, and then to one more checkpoint. Next, we need to stitch the other side. Be very attentive. Stitch from the coat side, not from the gusset side. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to turn the angles right side out accurately. Be very careful and attentive. Natalie has reached one more checkpoint, so she has turned the detail. The width of the seam is 1 centimeter. Do not forget to add 1 centimeter for the seam when cutting a gusset. The details are not ironed yet. Let's have a look at the right side and the wrong side. Have a close look at the doubled parts. We've stretched them. The width of the seam here is 1 centimeter. It is just about 2 millimeters wide here in the checkpoints. That's why these details were doubled. When stitching the gusset, make sure to stitch right in the seam. Let's go to the ironing desk. We've already stitched the gusset, and next we need to iron it. Be very attentive. Natalie has pressed the side and the underarm seams open. As for this seam, it should be pressed to one of the sides. It should be directed to the coat. We need to get a clear diamond shape. Be very careful. Spread and iron the corners accurately. Then fold them and press again. Have a close look here. Natalie has folded the corner and pressed it. It's necessary to do it for edging the gusset with the bias binding. It's very convenient to work with the gussets when the shoulder seams are not stitched. Even though it's just a mock-up, Natalie is doing everything perfectly. We'll show you how to edge the gusset with the bias binding. We have bought this cotton bias binding in the shop. We need to fold it in half and press it. We've already done it off the camera. Let's go back to the table. Have a close look here. The bias binding should be folded in such a way that one side is 1 millimeter wider than the other. Put the wider side down. Be very attentive. If you want, you can first stack the bias binding. The width of the seam is 1 millimeter. Stitch right in the edge of the bias binding. It's not hard to stitch the straight sides. Be very careful here. You need to cover 2 layers with the bias binding. Turn the detail carefully and accurately. And then continue stitching. The bias binding should be stitched from one checkpoint to the other as well. Do not change the shape of the details when stitching them. All of the lines should be smooth. The seam should run from the side seam to the gusset and further to the underarm seam. Be very careful in this point. The corner should be folded and ironed. It seems to be not difficult to make a coat with dolman sleeves. But edging the gussets is not that easy. The work is delicate. Have a look at the first side. Very neat. Here are the folded angles. Next, we need to stitch the other side. Such cotton bias binding is very convenient to work with. It's not slippery. However, I recommend you taking the bias binding first. Be very careful when edging the gusset. Edging the side seam is easy. You edge only one layer. When you need to edge 2 layers, you should be very careful. Make sure to spread the fabric thoroughly. Be especially attentive when you reach the checkpoint. Spread the fabric and continue stitching. The corners should be smooth and beautiful. Don't make any sharp angles. It's very convenient to edge the seams with the cotton bias binding. We have a tutorial on how to make it. Watch it if you haven't done it yet. If you can't find the ready-made bias binding of the perfect color, you can make it. We need to iron the bias binding next. Natalie is ironing the seams. I remind you that the side and the underarm seams were pressed open. The gusset seam was pressed to one of the sides. Ironing gussets is not that easy. Be very careful. Don't make any folds in the other details. It's also important not to change the shape of the details.
Сложно. Немножко сложновато утюжить. Красиво с лицевой стороны.
The detail looks very beautiful.
Будет теперь удобно с
Wearing coats with gussets, you will be able to raise your arms without any problems.
свободы. Вы сейчас после
When you finish ironing the gussets, you can stitch the shoulder seams.
верхний шов рукава. Вот так выглядит
This is how the gusset looks like from the wrong side.
стороны. Красиво.
Very nice.
Ластовица.
It's neatly edged with the bias binding.
Уголочки все запрятаны.
We were glad to show you this technique. That's all for today. Be different and beautiful. We are Natalie and Ira. Buy our courses, subscribe to this channel, write comments, share the videos, press a like and the bell buttons. We would really appreciate your support. Thank you. Goodbye.